So several years ago, I was in the sacristy at the cathedral with Bishop Okoviak and Father Tony Russo. Father Tony was the pastor of OLC, Our Lady of Consolation. I was his associate. And so Bishop walks up to Father Tony and I, and he says, "Who drove?" And immediately Father Tony says, "He did. He gets us places faster." And I'm like, dude, don't throw me under the bus. Then about a month later, I was driving Father Tony's car because I get us places faster. And Father Tony, there was a seminarian in the back and a deacon. So there's four of us. We're all dressed in clerics. So if you've been to Rockford, there's Herman's Boy. You familiar with Herman's Boy, maybe? Okay. Well, anyway, this little coffee shop is on this curve, on this road. And it's one of those roads that's impossible not to speed on. You are always going faster than you should be. So I wasn't really paying attention to how fast I was going. Approach this curve as we're coming out of it. There he is, the police officer. I'm like, no. So then I look down and my heart falls. I'm going 37, not 25. And sure enough, cop pulls out right away, pulls me over. I'm like, this is going to be great. So he walks up to the window, the driver's side door. And I don't know about you, but when I get nervous, I get in trouble because I start talking, right? So the police officer says something to me, and he goes, "Well, where are you going?" And if you know where I'm talking about, Our Lady of Consolation is just a little ways up the hill. So I just said, "Up the hill." And he's like, "I don't get that." I'm like, "Oh, I just mean we're going to the church, that thing right there." And he laughs, and he grabs my license, comes back, and he says, "You gonna slow down?" I'll slow down. He's like, "Okay, warning this time." Like, "You are the man," So, anyway, it was a pretty humbling moment for me. Partly because it was embarrassing, which, I think happens to us all the time. But when I say it's a humbling moment, it's not humbling because it was embarrassing. I think that's a trap we get ourselves into. It's humbling because it was a moment that I was imperfect, that I made a mistake. That's why it was humbling. Because it was just a reminder that there are things that I don't do perfectly in my life. And so Jesus this weekend gives us this theme of humility, and he wants us to grow in humility. And I just want to offer 3 people as people that we should aspire to be, like them, who are icons of humility. And the first one shouldn't be surprising. The first one is our Blessed Mother, Mary. Because can you think of a more humble person than her? Think about it. The angel Gabriel appears to her and says, "You're going to be the mother of God's Son. And you're going to name him Emmanuel, God with us." He's going to be Jesus, our Savior. And what does Mary say? She says, "May it be done to me according to your word." Mary has the humility to let go of her plan and to accept God's plan. She has the humility to say, God is God and I am not. And therefore, whatever God's plan is, it's the best plan. And that's the plan I'm going to follow. One of the things that I would say to the seminarians when I was director of priestly vocations is, and I would say to them, I will support you 100% if you want to leave seminary, as long as you're being led by Jesus, as long as it's God's plan. Because if it's not God's plan, I'll push back. Because we should always follow God's plan above our plan, because God's plan is the best plan. And so for us, the first way that we can grow in humility is to say, God, you are God and I am not, and I will follow your will above mine. The second person that I want to point out is St. John the Baptist. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was a Jewish rabbi and I had these disciples and these followers, I'd be pretty upset if they left me for some other guy, And that's what happens. He's got these followers, and here comes Jesus. And some of them leave because John literally tells them he's the one, go follow him. But they go and they follow a new rabbi. And what does John say? He doesn't get upset. He doesn't get envious. He just says, it's time for me to decrease and for the Lord to increase. It reminds me of one of my favorite movies, I think one of the best movies that came out when I was a kid, Remember the Titans. And if you've seen the movie, I think it's one that most of us have seen, but if you don't remember, it's about the racial tensions in America. And this team that's, the first time we've got a group of black men and white men playing together, and it's how they come and unify and become a powerful force and actually win the championship. And one of the most important moments in the story is that Gary Bertier, who's the captain, who's the white captain, he recognizes at some point he's got to decrease so that Julius Campbell, the black captain, can increase and be the leader he's called to be. And it's only when that happens that they unify and have a peaceful team and are able to flourish. And I think the same is true for us. As we decrease and allow Jesus to increase, we become a force for good and peace and unity in our world. And then the third example is St. Paul. St. Paul is someone, when you read the scriptures, he always boasts about different things. He boasts about his successes and the things he's done well, but he boasts about his weaknesses. Where I am weak, I am strong because of Christ's power in me. And one of the things I love about St. Paul is he's humble because he's honest. When you think about humility, if someone says, hey, you're so good at whatever it is they're affirming you for, let's say you're a good writer, and they say, you're a good writer. Oh, I'm not a good writer. That's not humility. Because it's not honest. Humility is honest. And it acknowledges what we're good at and what we're not so good at. In other words, humility is the gift to see ourselves as God sees us, for who we fully are. And that's what St. Paul is good at. And that's what I encourage us to grow in, to see ourselves as God sees us. The very end of that gospel, when it feels like Jesus changes his whole topic of his parable, because it's all about humility. And in the very end, he says to the guy who's invited people to the feast, he says, don't just invite the wealthy people, your friends and whatever. He says, no, invite the crippled, the lame, and those who can't repay you. What's the point? Invite the people just like you. Invite the people who need a Savior, because we all need one. And so as we seek to grow in humility this weekend, let us be more like Mary, to accept God's plan over our plan, to be like John the Baptist, to point to Jesus in all the things that we do, and to be like St. Paul, to be honest about our gifts, but in our weaknesses, in the ways that we need Christ.